You're listening to the Inbound Logistics Podcast with today's guest, Lori Boyer, Head of Content Marketing for Easypost. The growth of e-commerce continues to speed, and keeping up with the demand is a challenge for any business. Companies that adapt best to the changing demands can reap the benefits like cost savings and efficiency gains, which leads to bigger and better growth. Smart load planning is a tool that warehouses can leverage to address the changing needs of e-commerce. Lori Boyer, Head of Content Marketing for Easypost, shares some of her insights into how smart load planning could revolutionize warehouse operations. Joining me today on the Inbound Logistics Podcast, I have Lori Boyer, Head of Content Marketing for Easypost. Lori, thank you so much for hopping on the show today.
So excited to be here, Jeff. This is going to be a fun day.
It's good to have you. Lori, do me a favor, though. Introduce yourself to our audience. Give us a little bit about what you're doing there at Easypost.
Oh, awesome. So I am Lori Boyer. As you mentioned, I'm the head of content. Really what that means is I spend all of my time kind of diving into the latest challenges in our industry. I figure out what kind of solutions people need and, just kind of like stay up with the times. My family tend to tease me that my catchphrase is, oh, I read a study, because I really do like to read studies and like to see what's going on. So for me, it's all about what's the latest, what are your peers doing out there, what do you need to do to make sure that your job is as easy as possible. And yeah, I have 7 kids, Jeff, and I
Wow.
am in the Dallas, Texas area.
Very cool. So you're an expert at planning for 7 kids. Come
Yeah,
on.
exactly. I mean, how could I not end up in, supply chain and logistics industry?
Excellent. On that note, we're going to talk about smart load planning. Easy posted a thought leaders article for Inbound Logistics Magazine. Let's get into it then. Considering the pressures of e-commerce growth on modern warehouses, how does the adoption of smart load planning directly address some of those specific challenges?
Yeah, I mean, I think challenges are kind of the name of the game these days, Jeff. But I think I want to kick off actually. Let's talk a little bit about what smart load planning actually means to me, at least. A lot of people kind of get confused and wonder about different definitions. So when I'm talking about this to my friends, to my family, I'm always like, okay, imagine that you've got this crazy 3D game of Tetris, but maybe instead of, your nice little blocks that are coming down and you're like killing it in the game, your pieces are more like crazy shapes, and some are fragile and some say don't stack me, and the level changes every 5 seconds. That's really what the warehouse reality is. And smart load planning, that's what helps you basically win the game all the time. It helps you figure out the best way to pack, to palletize, to load your stuff, whether it's in a shipping carton, if it's in the pallet, on a pallet, or in the truck, or whatever. The goal is simple. The real goal of this smart load planning is to use every inch of space you've got. Don't break anything. Save all the money you can while you're at it. I think I've been in a lot of warehouses, and I have to say there's some that are a little old school still. They're kind of sort of following just their set of rules, or winging it with their gut instinct, all of that kind of stuff. But today, with technology, so cool. You use basically algorithms. Jeff, do I sound extra cool when I say algorithms?
Of course.
I thought I was about 10% smarter. Okay. So algorithms, you're using the algorithms to basically take into account all that stuff, your size, your weight, your stackability, the fragility, when it needs to be delivered, the sequence of delivery, your carrier requirements, the retail rules. It's like, I don't know, it's like your spreadsheet on caffeine. It covers cartonization, making sure everything's in the right box and it's packed perfectly. So you're not getting that giant box of empty air. I think we've all had that where you order some small thing and you get it in a giant box. Palletization, that's when you're stacking it safely without it just becoming this, tower of disaster. And then your container loading as well. So smart load planning incorporates all of that. What's interesting, Jeff, I feel like is a lot of different people use this. I think sometimes people think, oh, this is big warehouses, 3PLs, massive brands, manufacturers. But it's not just them. We see quite a few people who are smaller and they just want to be moving stuff from, point A to point B in the most efficient way. So that's my like background of what smart load planning means to me. But you asked me about kind of the headaches, the challenges, and there are some really specifics. I'm sure that your audience out there could guess off the bat some of them, but um, it really does help you with changes in order volume. So as it increases, you may get more orders. That always means more chaos, especially we're talking peak season or something. You may have some massive changes. So smart load planning really helps keep things flowing all the time. Another big challenge I feel like we're facing is just like customer expectations. I am that person who wants it perfectly. I
Right,
feel
right.
bad because I work with professionals in this industry every day, and yet, like you mentioned, I had to do a lot of planning for my kids and my family. And if something is broken, or honestly, even like I was saying, Jeff, if you had that experience where a box comes and it's giant and you have like a tiny thing in it,
Right, right.
yeah, that's like super annoying because then you have to break down the box. And so, yeah, it addresses that. That's also sustainability. We can talk about that at some point, but also labor issues. I mean, getting people in the warehouse, our labor challenges in this industry are never ending. So it does. You don't have to have that one person who is so good. My husband, when we're like packing a moving van or even just like finagling a couch into the house, he's so much better than me at like figuring out where things fit. And sometimes we've kind of relied on that wizard in the warehouse who kind of knows. But with using technology, it basically gives every employee kind of the cheat code so you can know what you're doing. Um, it really helps with costs. What we're seeing typically in the industry is research shows that if most companies can save at least 15% overall in their costs simply if they have better loading. Um, that's just, a basic cost thing. Obviously, as you're like taking up less space and as you're able to use fewer trucks, you are able to, dramatically cut just your labor, your material waste costs and space. Warehouses aren't growing magically, especially in busy areas. And I talk to people who are like, I need to expand, but the spaces can be limited. So smart planning makes that just so it's a lot easier um, than what you've already got. We actually had worked with this healthcare company who was struggling with that very thing. They like wanted to add additional warehouse space, but instead they were fine. They found that if they just changed their packaging, they were able to keep the warehouse they were already using and eliminate some of the space needs they thought they had. So yeah, it's kind of turning your warehouse from sort of just running a little bit more sluggishly into beast mode. So who doesn't want that?
Yeah, I only have three kids, and on a much smaller scale, I could use some smart load planning when we moved houses.
Seriously, it's crazy. I know. Next time I move, for sure, I'm gonna get some smart load planning.
Right, right. Well, on the other side of that, the thought leaders article identified wasted space, obviously, in cartons and trucks
Mhm.
as an inefficiency. Beyond just reducing the wasted space, what are some other tangible benefits that companies can expect to see if they implement intelligent automation for load planning?
Yeah, what's interesting is we see far fewer damaged items. So, I kind of mentioned before that taking into account, you got to look at the fragility of items, the weight distribution. So sometimes you're getting something heavy, on top of something that maybe is going to get broken. So we see far fewer damaged items when you do that, which again helps with that customer experience and also just costs and insurance and
Sure.
all of that. Lower transportation costs in general. So we're reducing the actual number of trips that need to be taken. Everyone hates the truck that's partially full or that you had to, you filled up a truck and so you're going to have to get a part of a second one. And so fewer trips are needed. Interestingly, we see a lot faster packing times, which sometimes you would think would be not that because you're being really specific about what goes where, but we do see fewer packing times, really predictability. I mean, I think in this industry, predictability is just huge. It's a very unpredictable industry in general.
For sure.
But by making things a little bit more predictable, by using data and information instead of kind of tribal knowledge, that really helps bring consistency. And really, that's what scalable growth is about, is making sure that things are predictable. And yeah.
All right. Now, for companies that are currently using manual packing or basic rules-based logic, what are some of the key indicators, or as was mentioned in the article, emergencies that would strongly suggest that it's time to invest in intelligent load planning solutions?
No, that's a great question. I think for anything in the industry, there are trigger points, indicators, as you said, that mean that it's time to make a change for anything. So there are certain times that, in general, if you're ever doing changes to your warehouse, upgrades. So I mentioned, there was a healthcare company we worked with that was going to add a warehouse and really didn't need to. So if you're at a trigger point where you're making some sort of changes to your operations when it deals with your warehouse, I would absolutely always take time to step back and see if load planning might be a right option for you. But also, there's small symptoms that are maybe like, are you routinely air shipping boxes that are half full? Are you getting slapped with dim weight fees, or maybe seeing, like we talked, rising damage claims, or maybe your team is just spending like tons of hours reworking shipments. If you're starting to see some little drains on that, those are blinking red lights. Again, the tipping point's really if you're throwing money at shipping or labor and you're not seeing your throughput improve, that's really when smart load planning is sort of not just a nice to have, but it's a non-negotiable. You are most likely, losing money down the drain at that point.
Right. All right. I want to go back to that big word you used, algorithms, again,
Uh-huh.
if we
Oh,
can.
you sound so smart, Jeff.
Thanks.
Uh-huh.
Can you go into that a little bit more and talk about some of the real challenges that these algorithms are designed to adapt to beyond that Tetris shapes and sizes
Yeah.
problem?
Oh, great question. There's things like weight distribution. That's a big one that I think people don't always consider, but that really helps avoiding tipping or breakage. Um, and like the stacking constraints, we had actually one company that could not improve. They couldn't break past their old fill rate ceiling because some of their SKUs had to ship upright. Um, and it was making all of their planning really complicated. So with load planning, they were able to adjust for orientation, and then they were able to push over 90% without breaking anything. So that kind of stacking type constraints, we see a lot actually with carrier specific limits. So uh, using multiple carriers is massive today. The shift to moving away from maybe one carrier that you're super familiar with and all their constraints. When you add in a lot of multi-carrier shipping, a lot of times you're going to get some limits that you might not be as familiar with. So carrier specific limits, like what their max pallet height is, or maybe the regional trailer types that are used in different areas, those can be brought into consideration. Item compatibility. You don't want to pack your bleach right next to your batteries. You could run into some sort of issues there. And even like temperature zones or, loading sequences tied to delivery order. It's really about logistics chess, not checkers in a way. It's sort of
Mm-hmm.
taking into all consideration all of the different intelligent things that you need to keep track of and are just so hard to do manually.
Right. Okay. That thought leader's piece, by the way, when a company decides to implement a smart load planning solution, the advice in the article was to start small, test the results, and let the data speak for itself. So, what initial metrics or KPIs should a company focus on tracking to demonstrate the value and impact of the smart load planning solution?
Mm, I love this advice in general. Start small, test the results, and then let the data speak because it's hard for anyone to make a massive change. And so, so I speak frequently, Jeff, at conferences or, in webinars, different things. And that is always one of my key pieces of advice. Start small. When we start too big, it's almost always a disaster. We had a company that I was working with that really wanted to improve their fill rate. They were just at about 60%, and they really wanted to get higher. 95% was their goal, and that was pretty high. But the team was nervous. So they did it simply in 5% increments. They set a goal to improve 5% until their team, did get more confident. And then over time they reached up to that 95%. So the metrics that I would say to look at and doing these one at a time, focusing, don't try to, what is the saying? Eat the elephant or swallow the ocean or something all at once. I don't know what it is, but
Right.
you guys, everyone listening can let me know. But I would say look at your carton fill percentage. That's how much of each box is actually being used. It's a huge, huge ability to save money if you can get that fill rate up, like the company I was just sharing. Your average cost per shipment. So maybe you're wanting to see how much money is being spent per shipment and how you can improve that. Your packing time per order is a really great one. So when we're talking labor and efficiency, moving things through the warehouse, how long does it take? Damage, again, we've mentioned that before, but what is the rate of your damage claims? You should be able to continually lower those. Look at that KPI, see what sort of value you're getting with that. I'd also look at your shipping cost per unit. Those are all things that I would recommend to track the before, track the after. It should be a number thing. So no matter what company you're using, whoever you're going with smart load planning, because it is very numerical and very technical, you can get really good numbers. We had a company that I was chatting with recently, and they had did 1 month. So they took a month of past shipments. They ran it through a smart load planning test. So you can run simulations, you can look at tests, and saw that within 1 week of using it, they would be able to, it would be fully paid for. So look at what kind of ROI you're going to be getting. It's easy to find and to really sell leadership. That 1 month test, obviously they tracked just the basics, the basic kind of things I shared, sold leadership immediately. It's not a spin. This is just looking at the numbers and seeing what makes sense.
All right. Well, speaking of that leadership, then, if we go beyond the numbers, beyond the cost savings and
Mhm.
the efficiency gains, how can that data be leveraged for strategic decision making in areas like inventory management, supplier selection, or forecasting demand fluctuations driven by the e-commerce trends?
I love it. Jeff, words are hard.
No, I know.
It's hard to talk sometimes, huh? It's hard
Algorithm.
for
How
me.
algorithm?
Exactly. Algorithm. Smart, smart, smart. Love it. Yeah, there's a ton of different ways. Oh, I'm such a nerd, Jeff. I'm such a nerd, but I love data so much because it really, really, really can help you make decisions, not just based on gut, not just based on, tribal knowledge. The data is gold. For instance, we had a company that I was working with, and they were really struggling with some of their timing. And they found that there was a single SKU was wrecking their pallet plans every time. But by using that data, they then were able to work with a supplier to help repackage and fix the way it was coming across, and the issue was totally fixed across the company. So there are a lot of different ways. I would say procurement. So again, like in that, if you've got SKUs that are creating issues, inefficiencies, could be that, you can go back to your supplier. In the case of that company, they went back to their supplier and changed the packaging. But you could also switch vendors. So you can figure out maybe which SKUs are creating issues. It really helps with demand planning. You're able to see those trends and order patterns, different SKU combinations that may be surprising to you. That's always exciting. And also, I really see that it works with refining your inventory slotting. So maybe high volume, awkward items, they're stored in a way that is optimal during the pick and pack process and your loading process as well. Really just gives visibility. We really can't fix anything unless you can see where some of the issues are. And that's what data sort of does with smart load planning.
Okay, great. And on that fixing things note, the emphasis on sustainability in supply chains. Uh,
Mm.
how can smart load planning contribute to an environmentally conscious warehouse and logistics operations?
Okay. Jeff, this is one area I love because we talk a lot about, being environmentally friendly
Sure.
and carbon neutral and all of these things, but a lot of times it's hard to quantify.
Right.
Um, we get people who are greenwashing. We have issues where, greenwashing is that idea that maybe you're saying it looks good, but maybe your results aren't actually that trackable. And that is the exact opposite here. Well, obviously less space wasted. Again, words are hard. Less space
Right.
wasted means you have fewer trucks. Fewer trucks means there are fewer emissions going out into the air. That's simple math. One of our customers, they were able to cut their carbon materials by 35% just by using smaller, smarter boxes. We're not shipping air. You're not putting gas out there just because, you didn't plan the box very well. So let's save money, save trees. That keeps the planet happy. We're actually seeing some of these really fancy digital solutions are literally removing trucks from the road. We're able to do some really cool, like digital planning of fleets and whatnot beforehand. And that obviously cuts fuel, labor, carbon, but it also cuts down on waste. So we're talking the materials, the exactly me unloading my 8,972 Amazon boxes I get every week at my house or every day, Jeff. I don't
Right.
know.
Right.
With my kids, but we don't have as many packing materials out there. Damage. And, we talk about damage a lot of times from a standpoint of, hey, your customer's going to be mad, but it's also waste. We don't always think of it, but that goes into the landfills. And it allows companies really to meet your sustainability targets without needing to sacrifice your efficiency. It's one of those win, 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 win wins for everybody. You win because you're saving money. The roads win. My husband's not going to be as cranky because there's not as many trucks on the road when we're driving.
Right.
And the environment wins, your customers win. So it really is one of those things where it just makes sense.
Okay. Now, as warehouse automation technologies become more prevalent, we're talking about autonomous mobile robots, automated storage and retrieval systems, things like that. How can the load planning systems be integrated with those technologies for a more cohesive and optimized end-to-end warehouse? And what are some of the potential challenges and opportunities that that integration can bring about?
Okay, I love robots too. I could
Right?
probably spend like hours on some of the different shows that I go to watching the robots and playing with the robots. And honestly, I would love an autonomous mobile robot, as you said, at my house.
Yeah, of
That'd be
course.
amazing. But we get that question a lot. Does smart load planning, if I'm wanting to automate with, different robots and whatnot in my warehouse, how does that work in conjunction with smart load planning? And actually, it's amazing. It's not just like, oh, it works well with it. It actually improves it. It makes the automated systems smarter. We had a customer who used their load planning to choreograph. You can imagine a beautiful symphony inside their entire warehouse. The system basically told the robots, the AMRs, what to grab, when to grab it. And, you just end up with fewer misloads, tighter fulfillment time, fewer angry customers. But yeah, it can pre-sequence picks for AMRs based on your loading order. It can align with your ASRS, as you said, your automated storage and retrieval systems to kind of stage the items by pallet or by carton configuration, whatever you want. It can feed instructions into your WES, your WMS system. So it works really well together. It's really beautiful. As I said, that smart symphony. Of course, you said what potential challenges might we have? Data silos. I think that's a challenge everywhere. But if you can make sure your systems are integrated, so that's going to be critical that everything integrates well together. because when it is amazing. It is powerful. You are not just automating a little bit over here and a little bit over there. It's like the full thing is automated and it is beautiful.
We're a ways away from an automated home where that can keep me,
I
right?
know. As soon as you invent it, Jeff, call me first.
You got it. You got it. All right. With the rise of omnichannel retail and the
Mhm.
increasingly complex order fulfillment requirements, how does load planning adapt to handle those really diverse order types and ensure that it fulfilling is efficient and accurate, particularly across different channels?
Yeah. I mean, omni-channel is complex and honestly it's growing a huge amount because, people don't just shop just in the store or just, online or we like it every way that we want it is how we want it. So,
Right.
a smart load planning is great here because that is you're taking out some of those manual challenges. It's about flexibility. So if one minute you're, building a truckload for wholesale and then next you've got 20 or 200 or 2,000 tiny little direct to consumer boxes, smart systems help switch context on the fly. So, they'd take account for channel specific rules, whether you're looking for this load is speed or fragility or your branding. We've had companies who are really about the unboxing experience. And so that's a kind of different approach. If you're doing consolidation, it will just still optimize regardless of the load type. It's kind of like having a load planner who speaks every retail dialect fluently and that expert that you don't have to have in a single person. So it's really flexibility. It makes sure that you are efficient. It makes sure you're accurate. You've got the customer experience you want across all the different channels.
All right, scratch that geek itch a little bit for me, and think back to those shows and the demos and all of the exhibits
Mhm.
that you've seen. What are some of the emerging trends or the future innovations in smart load planning that will further revolutionize warehouse operations, given the ever-evolving e-commerce demand on us?
So I had to put on like my future fortune teller hat.
Yes,
Is there a
exactly.
fortune teller hat? If there is, I'm wearing it. I think anytime we look into the future, I get too excited. I had to like hold myself back. But I think if the last few years, starting at COVID, going through now, just with all the geopolitical issues, the natural disasters, I think we know that flexibility and the ability to pivot is going to be kind of the a critical element for every warehouse. And so I think the future of load planning is going to be that in exactly adaptability. I hope we're going to see systems that, adjust faster, think smarter, connect across more parts of the warehouse and the supply chain. Obviously, you can't go to a show or go anywhere without hearing about AI.
Sure.
AI is massive in this potential, in this piece where there's so much data and so many items. I think we'll see a lot more maybe real-time optimization, virtual simulations. So I mentioned earlier, we're starting to see some kind of virtual simulations of loads and of full routes. Um, it kind of sounds a little bit sci-fi, but I think the goal is there. It's to make it faster, smarter decisions, have less waste. I think our integrations are going to be really critical as we move forward. So the best systems are going to really integrate well with robotics, with your WMS, with your transportation systems. Again, we don't want those silos. What we want are just fewer trucks, fewer mistakes, a lot more efficiency without having to throw more bodies or budget at the problem. So yeah, tech's getting fancier. I don't know if we're going to throw into, digital twins or robots with clipboards, but I think the future is going to be about making fewer guesses, better visibility, kind of like finally using Google Maps instead of saying, I think we're going to turn left here, or, how we did it when I was a kid. That's going to be the critical future is visibility, removing doubt.
As long as we don't wind up in the Matrix or with a company like Skynet.
I can't guarantee that. Can't guarantee
Oh,
it, Jeff. Sorry.
fair enough. Fair enough. Lori, where can I send the audience if they want more information about smart load planning or anything that Easypost can help with?
Yeah, you can definitely go to our website. Can we include that in the show notes?
Absolutely.
Awesome. Go to our website. You're always, I'm happy to connect with people on LinkedIn. I'm Lori Boyer. I love chatting with people about things. And if you want to learn about Easypost, you can go to the Easypost website. But yeah, we'd love to hear what you're doing. I love visiting warehouses and getting boots on the ground and seeing what cool things you're doing. I would love to hear about where your challenges are. So for sure, reach out. We'd love to chat with you and just hear what's going on in your world.
Excellent. A lot of great information there. Check out that Thought Leaders piece in Inbound Logistics Magazine. Lori Boyer, thank you so much for your time, and best of luck to you and to EasyPost.
Thanks so much for having me, Jeff. This has been a blast.
Inbound Logistics Magazine is the information leader in supply chain and logistics management. Start your free print and digital subscription today by visiting bit.ly/getil. That's bit.ly/get_il and stay ahead of the 3PL game.
The Inbound Logistics Podcast is a production of Inbound Logistics Magazine. For the most in-depth information around logistics, transportation, and supply chain practices, get your free print and digital subscription at inboundlogistics.com/subscribe. Connect with us via LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube for the most current developments in the industry. If you'd like to leave us some feedback or have a topic you'd like to see covered in a future episode, call our dialogue line at 888-878-3247 or leave us an email at podcast@inboundlogistics.com. I'm your host, Jeff Ida. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you next time here on the Inbound Logistics Podcast.